Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Winifred and it has been a while since I uploaded a video. Work life's been really busy, but well, today I'm back with a new video, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can make some wafer paper leaves and also 2 ways that you can tie them into a vine for cake designs and floral arrangements like these. This is a really universal technique that can be applied across different leaves as well, so you don't have to really stick to only this kind of leaves. Leaves are a great supporting role for cake designs, though they can be the main one. They are easy to make but so important and elevate your cake designs in no time. So 2 years ago, I've actually done a video on wafer paper leaves and it got really popular with you guys. You can check it out in the link above. So I would say that video is more of like a basic foundational one, great for beginners to begin with if you guys have no idea how to work with wafer paper and such. And I would say in today's video, there are more techniques to be learned, and I promise it's a lot more fun and there are more ways to implement them into your cake designs and works too. So without further ado, let's begin. Okay, let's go through the tools and materials you'll need for our wafer paper leaves. So first, you'll need a color palette to store your colors, a pair of craft scissors to cut our wafer paper, some wire plier for us to cut our wire. So for today's tutorial, the wire we'll be using is a 26 gauge white wire. I'm using a 26 gauge because I'm forming like vines from my leaves, so I need them to be really thin like this. Then next we'll need our Dresden Tool. This is for us to shape our leaves. So for Dresden Tool, there is a rounder end and there is also a sharper end. Okay. So we need a floral foam pad. This is for us to work on our leaves, similarly to create some indentation on our leaves. So a floral foam pad. For floral tape, you can either go with a white one or a green one. So I'm choosing the white one today because I'm going to do some dusting later, so I will show you in a bit. And then for our brushes, for our wafer paper, I'm using a brush with a shorter bristle because I want it to have a better liquid control when I'm coloring my wafer paper. Okay. Next, I'll need a wafer paper brush for my wafer paper glue. This is for us to stick our wafer paper leaves onto the wire. Okay, so here I have my shortening with me, a cornstarch in a cornstarch bag, and I have some wafer paper glue, and the conditioner or the liquid I'm using today to dilute my gel paste into a paintable consistency is vodka. If you're not sure what liquid you should be using to dilute your gel paste into a paintable consistency, you can go ahead and refer to this table shown here. Next, for our leaves, we'll need some veinner. So I have 2 types of veiners here. They are both leaf veiners. You can go ahead and use any type of leaf veiners that you want. Since I'm focusing mostly on leaves that looks like rose leaves today, I'm using a veiner that represents the veining of rose leaves. So this is one of them. And I have another one that looks like that. Okay. So the colors we'll be using today for our wafer paper leaves will be gooseberry from Sugar Flare and juniper green from Wilton. We'll need some paper towel for us to swatch our colors and to tap off some excess liquid. And lastly, we'll need some wafer paper to make our wafer paper leaves. So I'm going to show you how you can cut out your own wafer paper leaves. So we're going to start out with a blank slate here. The wafer paper I'm using here is an O grade version, so it's about 0.2 millimeters. You can go ahead and use the AD grade, which is about 0.27 to 0.3 millimeters as well. You can find more information about wafer paper thickness in the link in the description box below. And lastly, you can refer to this leaves template here in your source guide if you're unsure how to cut a shape of a leaf. The link to the source guide can be found in the description box below as well. And with that, we are ready to start making our wafer paper leaves. So first, we're going to start off by trimming our wire. So we do not need the stem of the entire leaves to be so long, so I'm going to go ahead and trim my wire. So I'm going to use my wire plier and probably trim this guy into threes. And I'm going to set this aside. Next, I'm going to work on my colors of my leaves. So if you can see here, there are actually two tones to our leaves. So we'll be making two types of different greens for our leaves before we start painting on them. So I'm going to pull out my gel colors into my palette before we start mixing our colors. So here we have our gooseberry in a well. And I'm pulling out my juniper green, which is a darker, cooler green. So now I'm going to mix my colors into a paintable consistency, starting with the warmer green, which is gooseberry. I'm going to pick some of my gooseberry gel color here and then start going into my well. Okay, so before we start painting, I'll swatch my colors to make sure I get the green that I want. So here we have our green. And then I'm going to go with a slightly darker green, so more gooseberry. Maybe just a shade darker. Okay, so this looks good. I'm just going to leave it here. Now I'm going to work on my cooler green. So turning my well. Now I'm going to add some juniper green into this. So you can see immediately from our well colors that the temperature of the green is pretty distinct. This is the cooler one that I'm working with, and gooseberry is a warmer green. So let's just test out our colors. So I'm just going to work here. So you can see the difference in the green, a warmer one and a cooler one. So maybe I'm just going to go slightly darker than this by adding more gel paste. Okay, so this looks actually pretty good. I think I'm going to start going with this, and in case if it gets too light and I don't like it, I can always go back to add in color, so you don't have to worry about getting the perfect shade at this point of time. So okay, let's start with. Now let's begin working on our leaves. So putting my brushes aside. So let's start working on our leaves. So I'm going to show you how you can go ahead and cut out your leaves using the wafer paper that we have. So this is just half a piece of wafer paper because we do not need so much. So usually what I do is, you can go ahead and refer to your template, but I'm just going to freehand here. So I usually just roughly check the shape of or the length of the leaf that I want to work on. So probably just using my fingers as a guide. Maybe this is the size of the entire leaf that I want to go with. So I'm just going to use this as a guide and just draw a little dot on top and maybe one at the bottom here. So this will be the top of my leaf and this one will be the bottom part of my leaves. And then now I'm just going to draw a leaf shape. So maybe from the top, working on one side, and then the other one will mirror whatever I've drawn. Yes. So if you're not very sure like what shape you should go for, you can always check with your veiner as well. So roughly as long as it takes about the same shape of a leaf, or it can be any shape of leaf that you want to work with. If you are working with a maple leaf, then you can cut out a shape of a maple leaf. So you can always use this as references. So once I'm done with that, in order for me to cut out a few of these, I'm just going to fold my wafer paper first. And then you can go ahead and fold it the other way so it's easier for us to tear it. Okay, let's set this aside. And then right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this paper into many layers, so as I cut, I get many leaves out of this. Okay, so something like that. Okay, I'm going to grab my pair of craft scissors and I'm going to start to cut. So if you do not want the pencil marks to be in your final leaves, of course, you can go ahead and cut away the pencil marks. Okay, so this is what you should get. Okay, great. And now we're going to start working on our leaf. So by painting it, you're going to remember this is the brush that has my warmer green and this one has the darker green. You can do some like markings if you are not sure which one is it in case you mix it up. So I have my warmer green here. I'm just going to tap. So for this leaf, I want it to have maybe more of the warmer green and lesser of the darker green. So you want to be very careful when you're painting two tones onto a leaf to make sure that you do not put too much liquid. If not, the entire wafer paper might just disintegrate or becomes too soft. So you want to be very careful with your liquid control. So with my with my warmer green, I'm going to start from the bottom up. I'm going to paint it this way. And just flicking my brush so that the ends of the green are actually tapered off. So it allows for better introduction of my darker green coming from this angle. So I'm going to turn it around and do the same to the back. And right now with my darker green, I'm then going to go in this direction. I can turn it around. Can then do this. So you can see as I'm painting, I try not to paint the entire thing because I do not want to add too much liquid onto it. So I just want to be very careful with the amount of liquid that I'm using. So you can see two tones of green here. I'm going to then pick it up and put into my veiner. So it doesn't really matter, you can place it this way or place it this way depending on what color would you like for your leaves to be. So I want my darker green to be at the top tip of my leaf. So I'm just going to leave it here this way and then vein it. So this is how your leaf will look like. Just going to pick up my leaf. And at this point, before you allow your leaves to dry, you can actually also introduce more movement into your leaves. So now it looks pretty flat. And what you can do is, when it's soft, you can also use your fingers to just bend it and create a shape that you want. Or you can also use your Dresden tool and dip it into the shortening. So this is for the Dresden Tool to glide easier on the wafer paper. So using the Dresden Tool, the rounder end, I'm just going to put pressure on the sides or the edge of the leaf, and what that does is it helps me create this very nice roughly edge around the leaf, so a nice wavy motion you see here. Okay. So you don't have to do to the entire leaf, you can just choose for different parts to have that movement, and then you can just leave it to dry. Okay, now I'm going to work on another one. So maybe this one is a little bit too light. What you can do is, after you are done, maybe you find that, okay, this is really too light, you want to change up your colors, you can also go ahead and add more of the gel paste to create a darker, warmer green. I can swatch my colors here again just to test. Yeah, so this is definitely a darker one. I quite like it, so I'm just go ahead. So maybe for this one, I'm going to have lesser warmer green and more of the cooler green. So I can go ahead and start with my cooler green first. Turn it around. Similarly in a flicking action, so you can see the color really tapers off. And then I have my warmer green here. Making sure that I do not dredge my wafer paper with too much liquid. Pulling it up. So maybe this time I want a role reversal, so I want my lighter green or my warmer green to be on top of my leaf. I'm going to put it in this way. If you're afraid that your wafer paper will stick to your veiner, something you can do is you can go ahead and add some shortening on the veiner itself, and this will prevent the wafer paper from sticking onto our veiner. Okay, so there you go, you have a nice leaf shown here. Okay, now we're just going to pull it up and then introduce some movement into our leaf. So maybe with the Dresden Tool, so similarly just working on the edge, you can choose for different parts to work on. So you can turn around, you can maybe try to pull it in from outside as well. This gives a nice indentation to your leaves too. Okay, so these are just some of the things that you can do to your leaves. So I'm done with two of the leaves. I'm just going to set these two aside because I have some that I've actually done beforehand, and I'm going to show you how I create these guys. And then later on, I'm going to show you how you can tie a vine, which you can use it for your cake designs or any floral arrangements. To attach our leaves onto the wires that we have, we're going to use our wafer paper glue. So grab your brush. And you want your wires to go like right in the middle of the leaf, so it holds it up this way, like how a normal leaf will do. But just having the wafer paper or just having the wire stick onto the wafer paper this way is actually quite fragile because it can just pull off from the wafer paper anytime. So what we want to do is want to make sure that the wafer paper really hugs the wire and holds it this way. So once the wafer paper actually comes together, they have a tighter hold for the wire, and your leaf will not drop out easily. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put some of my wafer paper glue onto my wire. Just a tiny bit will do, you really do not need a lot. And you want to just put it in the middle here, and then just give it a few seconds for the wafer paper glue to soften the spine of the leaf. And then now, gently with your fingers, just press the back of the leaf. And then from the front, you can see how well it hugs the wire. So if it's not doing so, you can go ahead and add a little bit more of the glue, and then just make sure it hugs. so there you go. So this is how you attach the wire onto the leaf. Okay, so I'm going to do another one. If you want, you can also go ahead and attach your wafer paper glue here, but the danger sometimes is we attach too much and then this entire leaf might just be really soft and it might just disintegrate or becomes very wrinkled. So if you want to be safe, you can go ahead and put your wafer paper glue on the wire before you attach it onto the leaf. Okay, so place it right here. So you can see my leaf is pretty much hardened already because the alcohol in the leaf has dried out. So it has pretty much hold its shape already. So with the wafer paper glue going right in the middle, just where it needs to be at the spine, it helps to soften just the exact spot for it to soften and hug the wire. You can just put in a little bit more if it's not enough. So this is a tip I have for you. And because I'm working on a relatively, I will call it like a smaller size leaf, I can just use a 26 gauge wire. But if you're working on a slightly bigger one and you feel like a thicker stem will work nicer on a bigger leaf, you can go ahead and choose a thicker wire, like maybe a 24 gauge or a 22 gauge one. Okay, so here we go. And that's how you attach the wire onto the leaves. Okay, so here are some of the leaves that I actually prepped beforehand. So you can see I've gone ahead to play with the different shades of green using both the gooseberry and our juniper green. If you want to have a more desaturated green, you can also go ahead and add some red tones into it to kind of like cancel out the green, and that's how you get a muted green. So I'm just going to pull these two together. And if in the case that your wafer paper gets too wet and you want to really shape it, a foam shaper like that is great. So you can just go ahead and place your leaf into the shape and then allow it to dry according to the shape of the foam. So mine kind of dry really quickly, so I didn't need the foam, but if you do need, you can go ahead and consider something like that. Okay, so these are all the leaves that I have, and I think it's a good amount for me to create a vine that I want to create. So setting this aside, I'm going to use my floral tape, a white one, because I'm going to go ahead and dust my floral tape to make sure that the green matches the green that I have here. But if you do not want to dust your floral tape, you can also go ahead and choose a green that's closest to the green that you're working with. So this one works as well. Okay, so with the white one, I'm just going to pull out a little bit and I'm going to start cutting them. Maybe I'm just going to do 2 of it. Okay, so whenever you're working on a vine, you want to think about firstly how long you want your vine to be and what you're going to use it for. So those are some of the considerations you can think of before working on a vine. And secondly, maybe how tight or loose you want your vine to be. So some vines, right, they have like leaves going really, really tightly together. So they form like a really tight looking vine. So with a lot of leaves going on. So a really busy looking vine. So you can see, once I put 4 leaves, you can see how crowded it looks already, for example. Whereas in some cases, some vines are really empty. So you have a long stretch of like stem, and then the next leaves only probably comes out somewhere around here. So you can see this is a very empty vine as compared to what we have just now, which has almost like 4 leaves just at this length of the vine. So these are some of the simple considerations you can have before deciding to tie your vine or your leaves onto the vine. So probably I'm going to work on both of them to show you the difference, and then from there you can then decide how you want to tie your vines. So I'm going to start off with the tighter one. So maybe I'm just going to pick one random leaf that I have on my hand. And generally when you work on your leaves, usually the wires are like super straight this way. So when it's really straight, it looks very unnatural. So before I do any vines, usually I like to just bend my wires a little bit so that it has a more natural shape of the vine instead of a really straight one like this. So this really helps to make the entire vine look very natural. And with that, maybe for the second one, I'm gonna just bend it slightly over to another side as well. So here, so this is probably how I will start tying. So once I'm happy with this, and I know that I want this stretch of my stem to be showing, and you can see where I hold my finger. So this is where I know that I want my leaves or my vines to have this breathing space over here. If you want your vines to be very close up, you can actually go ahead and make it this way. This is how tight and close you can make it. But today I want it to have a bit more breathing space, so I'm just going to release my finger and allow this entire part to be exposed. So this is where they meet, so this is where my floral tape is going to start tying. So I'm going to pull my floral tape and pull it to kind of activate the glue in it. And then starting with where my fingers are, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it around. So making sure that I just twist and turn and pinch with my left hand or whichever your master hand is. This is my master hand, so I'm using my left hand to pinch and roll. And then because I want my stem to look very thin, so as I roll my floral tape down, I want to make sure that it goes at a 45-degree angle downwards this way. So usually my students, if they're not sure with tying vines, what they generally do is they keep rolling the wafer paper, or they keep rolling the floral tape in an angle that's not 45-degree. And with that, you can see that it creates a very thick stem here, which is not what I want. I want a very light or thin looking vine. So you want to make sure that the angle that you tie your floral tape in is always a 45-degree angle. That way you get to wrap your entire stem and make it look really thin. So I'm going to go ahead and continue. And at some point, once I'm ready to add another leaf, I am going to stop there and then maybe just pull in another leaf here. So I'm going for a more crowded vine now, so hold it there. And then I think I'm pretty happy with this. I'm gonna start continuing to tie. So this is how you create a vine. Sometimes you can have like two leaves really close to each other, so holding it there. And maybe I have another leaf going on here. And you can see I'm constantly just bending my wire and shifting around the angle as I go, because this is just a natural habit of mine. I always have to make sure that things looks very natural as I'm working on it. So I'm pretty happy with this. And then I'm going to continue rolling my floral tape downwards. Sometimes the position of your leaves will shift as you're doing, so don't worry about it because they are on wires. It's really easy for you to just switch the position if you want. And constantly. And then maybe I have like one last one that I can do a bigger one, which is the one that I've just done. Maybe this can go somewhere around here. And another tip to note that if you want your entire vine to look more natural, you want to make sure that the distance between each of them is not uniform as well, because nothing is really uniform in nature, right? So you want to make sure that when you're making your vines, you want them to look very natural. You want to make sure you play around with the distance between the leaves. So you can see they're closer here, and then for this one I have a longer stretch in between the two leaves. So maybe for this, you can either choose for your leaves to come out this way, or if you want a more airy version of your vine, you can go ahead and pull out your leaf so that it has a breathing space. And that creates a lot more airy looking vine as compared to something that is like this. So pull it out for more breathing space. Okay, once I'm happy, I'm going to continue rolling downwards and all the way to the end. Okay, so that is how I create one of my vines. So right now you can go ahead and shift and play around the position until you're happy with it. One tip I like to always have for my students is usually when people tie vines or they put leaves together, they like to look at it from only one angle, which is a two-dimensional angle, which is top down. So their leaves either go left or right. left or right. So it looks very flat. So for example, like that. So you can see the leaves looks pretty flat, right? It just goes left or right. So you can see if I turn it around, you can see the plane is very flat. These two. So in order for everything to look more natural, you can play around with different angles because you never really know like from which angle someone is looking at your leaves, and you want it to look more natural. If you look into nature for inspiration, none of the leaves are actually or vines are in such a flat, plain look. So you want to just play around. So instead of just doing this, you can push this leaf maybe to the back, and then maybe these two guys to the front, and just really looking around the entire thing. And for the top leaf here, for example, now it looks a little bit too flat. You can then bend your wire and allow it to come forward. And so now if you take a look at my vine, you can see that it actually goes in all sorts of different directions and looking a lot more natural as compared to the flat one that we had before. So ultimately, it also depends on how you're using these vines. So right now, I don't really have a cake design that I'm going to put it on, so I'm just going to show you this is how I do it. Once I have my cake design, then everything will start to change again according to how I want it to look on my cake. Okay, so this is a rather, I would say, crowded looking vine. Now I'm going to show you how I can create an airier and looser looking one. So I'm going to set this aside first. So for airier looking one, there are a few ways we can do it. So for the previous one, what we did was we started with a leaf as the first guy or the element of the vine. If you want to create an airier looking vine, another option you can have, you can start off with a plain wire, and you can keep the wire as it is, you don't have to cut it. And what we're going to do is, instead of starting with a leaf on top, you can actually keep it empty at the top, so it actually creates a very nice airy empty feeling on top. And then what we're going to do is start by adding a leaf somewhere around here. So you can see this is another option you can have while working on vines. And if you do not like your wire to be so stiff, you can obviously go ahead and twist it into any shape that you want. For example, like that. See? So that is how you can easily create something more airy looking. You can see just with two elements, it's already looking really airy. So this will probably be my first leaf that I'm going to start with. If you want to play around with a smaller leaf, you can do that also. So maybe I have a smaller one to start with here. Yeah, there. So maybe this looks nicer. So same thing, you can choose, you want your leaves to be really long, but because I want this to be my starting point, so maybe I'm going to go slightly shorter, but I still leave some breathing space for my stem here. So hold it there, and then I'm going to start tying my floral tape. And because this one I'm creating an airier one, so I won't be adding a leaf so quickly after this one. I want it to be like a longer empty vine, so I'm going to keep going. Okay, and then maybe at this point, I'm going to add like another tiny leaf. Something like that. I can go a little bit further, pulling it out maybe just to create a nice airy look. Okay, and I'm going to keep going. So at any point, you can always keep twisting your wire to make sure that it gets into the shape that you want. Okay, so far we've been adding the leaves according to just like one leaf at a time. What you can do next time, or what you can do, is you can also choose to have two leaves tied together first, like that. And then later on, maybe you just add them somewhere here, this way. Something like that. So this is just a preview. So I am liking what I'm seeing there, so I'm going to tie these two leaves together. Similarly, you can just decide how far you want to stretch your leaves out. For me, I like them to be pretty similar in terms of height, so I'm going to go with this. Grab my floral tape and start tying these two together first. Okay, you don't have to go all the way with your floral tip because you'll be attaching here. So just enough for the stems to be showing. Then I'm going to pull out my floral tip. And then maybe I'm going to continue tying it together first because I want a longer distance between these two leaves and the following two leaves. Then now I'm ready to tie these two leaves here. So maybe something like that. So you can see immediately the difference between this vine and one that I created previously. This is so much airier, looser, and then this is more crowded. So it gives us a completely different look, although with the same techniques we are using. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'm gonna then tie my floral tip here. Start going. And then maybe if I want, I'll just probably end off with one last one around here. So again, making sure that the distance are all different. So these two are pretty far apart. This is really close. And then this distance here is shorter than whatever I have here. So really playing around with the different distance. So if you want, you can go a little bit closer as well. Maybe something like that works. So what happens if, let's say, you want to go a little bit higher and your floral tip is ending right here now? What you can do is, don't worry, just put this aside. Go ahead and tie this, or you can just pull it out and then grab a piece of new floral tape and then start tying again. So maybe I'm looking at my leaf going at around here. And okay, sorry, maybe for this one I want it to stretch out a little bit more breathing space. Yep, something like that. Then I'm going to start tying them together. Okay, so there you go. So you can see the difference between these two. So I'm going to just set this aside first. So probably not going to use them. Okay, so you can see the difference between these two. Just a quick run through and comparison again. This is almost like a very crowded one. You can use it for, like, if for example you're working with cake designs that has very nice bouquets and you just want some leaves popping out of like the top or the side. This is a good option that you can go with. And if, let's say, you're working on a cake design that has very long vines, probably just wrapping around like the cake, or just like spiraling downwards towards the cake, or you want this entire thing to stretch out towards one side, this is a very good option. So you can see the two difference. Gives us very, very different vibes. So right now you can see the stems are all white, and this is where I'm going to go into dusting and show you how you can dust your stem and also maybe add a new color onto your leaves. Okay, so to add colors onto our stem and potentially to our leaves, I'm going to use some edible dust colors here. So here I have cinnamon and kiwi, both from Crystal Colors. And I have also some white cornstarch, which will act as my white dust. Just in case the colors get too saturated, I can just kind of tone it down. So for the brushes that I'm using, I have two brushes over here. So for the leaves, I'm thinking of using a longer bristle brush because probably I want to go into the entire leaf. So this is a better option for me. And for the shorter bristle ones, I find it easier for me to use this to dust my stem, so that it kind of like hugs the stem a lot faster, and you can see that it takes on colors a lot faster as compared to this one, which might just kind of like run over the wire and doesn't really get the colors on it. So those are the two options I have for my brushes. And I'm going to start with working with my leaves. So this is an optional one. If you're happy with how your leaves colors are here, you can just leave it. Sometimes if you just want to add on maybe like a tint of brown, you can do that. So I have my cinnamon over here. I'm just going to bring out the color and maybe just place it here. And then I have some white just in case my brown gets too dark. So the white is a perfect one to help me just lighten the brown. And I'm going to use this brush for my leaves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out some of my brown first. And maybe just some of my white. So the thing with dust colors is that you can always increase the color, or you can actually always increase the darkness of the color, but you cannot go lighter. So you always want to make sure you go with a lighter color first, and if you don't like it, you can always then bring in more of the dark brown. So maybe I'm just going to quickly swatch my color to see if I like my brown. So this is just a rough gauge because I'm putting it on a paper towel and not on my leaves. So let me just... Okay, so it looks pretty good for now, so I'm just going to leave it aside and start working on my leaves. If I'm unsure, I can always pick out a leaf that maybe it's not the final work piece and just dust it and see what I get. So probably just going to pull it. And there is no really like right and wrong as to where you want your brown to be, because like in the life of a leaf, usually brown just represents that it's about to die. So you can just pick any part of your leaf to turn it into just to add some brown tints onto it. So you can, maybe for me, I like this area, I will probably just go ahead and add some brown color there. So I'm just going to lightly flick my brush from outside in, because I'm trying to outline the brown on my leaf. So I'm doing a flicking action so that the brown stays on the outline of my leaf, and then just bring a little bit of brown in. So you can start to see, can you start to see the brown on the leaf? It's a very subtle one, but it does make a difference to the entire leaf previously. So you can also go ahead and add some brown in front, since the entire leaf actually operates as one, so whatever happens to the back, you want to make sure it happens to the front too. And then at this point, if you want to go with a darker brown, you can just go ahead and grab this. Or if you have any other browns lying around your house, you can also use those. When I'm adding brown, it's always a very subtle tone, so I want to make sure that it doesn't take away the entire leaf. I'm just really adding brown as a highlight or just a light tint of it. So I think this looks good. I'm going to set it aside, and maybe I'm just going to add some brown to this branch over here. So I prefer the lighter brown, so I'm going to go ahead and put some white. And then I'm going to start adding some brown onto my leaves. What I'm looking at here is just really the outline, so I'm not going to go too far into the leaf, just a little bit outline, so you can see some brown tints here. Okay, and then I'm going to keep going. So you can choose however amount of brown that you want. This is not a compulsory thing, so it really depends ultimately on the final artwork that you're working on. Do you want more browns, or do you just want the brown to just show so subtly like mine? And maybe I'll just choose for the last guy here to just have a tiny tint of brown. Okay, tap off the excess. Okay, so I'm pretty much done. So you can see the brown here, some brown tints here, and then I have some brown tints here. So I'm happy with it. I'm just going to leave it here. This one, I'm just going to leave it as green. And then now we're ready to dust the stem of our vines. Okay, so for the stem wise, I have Kiwi over here. So Kiwi is almost like a very nice muted green in my opinion. But if you want, you can always go ahead and add some brown to bring in some like rustic tones into the green. So pulling it here, I'm using my shorter bristle brush this time. So I'm just going to use the Kiwi as it is first to see what color I get. So I'm just going to test a little bit at the bottom. So you can see the green over here. Okay, so actually it's pretty bright for my liking. So I'm going to just maybe add in a little bit of brown that I had before. So maybe from here. so that it matches the color of my leaves better too. Okay, so you can see this green is slightly, it has a little bit more brown tones, so maybe I'm going to add in a little bit more brown. Yeah, and there you go. So you can see this green here is more brown, and this is a brighter green that we first did. Okay, so maybe I'm just going to dust over, and I'm just going to do the same for the entire stem that I have here. So remember to also dust the parts of the leaves where they have some exposed stem, because you want to tie the entire thing together. Sometimes your dust can also go onto your leaves. This really helps to tie everything together. Okay, so I'm done with this. And then for this one, I don't really have a lot of brown going on, so I'll use a green with lesser brown. Okay, and towards the end, you want to make sure this top part here, you just want to dust the entire thing green, although there's no floral tape, but my floral wire has just a very light layer of floral tape going around it, like paper going around it, so it does help to take on the dust colors. Some floral wires do not have the tape going around it, so you want to make sure that you get one with the paper. And yep, there you go. And then with that, you can see we are done with our two vines, both completed with the green and the brown tones we are looking for. And with that, we are done with our two vines. So you can see like the stems are well colored and the entire thing looks complete. And now you are ready to put this onto your cake design. Let me know if you've tried this and tag me on Instagram so that I can see and share your works. If you like this video or have taken away something valuable from it, remember to hit the like and subscribe button for more videos like this. And I'll see you in the next one.